launch, Devasri, so if you bring the book.
छोटू लाइट जला दे यार, ये बंद करना है।
Right, I don't know how to do that. We'll have to
यार ये लाइट जला के बंद कर दिया।
just one second, let me just adjust this. I'm going to begin with giving a very brief overview of the book, actually the structure of the book, and then I'll give you a short slide presentation, after which Malika and I will be in discussion. I just want for you to, before you see the slides, to understand, the sequence of events and what happened. King Thibaw belonged to a dynasty whose rulers were known as kings who ruled the universe and treated as demigods by their subjects. His wife, Queen Supyala, had great influence over him and is said to have been the true ruler of the kingdom during their 7-year rule. The first part of the book details their time in Mandalay, the opulence of their surroundings, the absolute authority they wielded over their people, who were regarded as their slaves, the superstitions and customs that were woven into the fabric of their beliefs, and the countless intrigues that they had to contend with. It also describes the war with Britain that led to their fall and exile, and the context in which it occurred. Stripped of his power and most of his wealth, the king and his family were exiled to the remote and culturally alien town of Ratnagiri. Here they were kept under virtual imprisonment, and a series of designated officers micromanaged almost every aspect of their existence. The government did, however, make an effort to make the family comfortable. The second part of the book describes the life of the family in exile. The king, a staunch Buddhist, found ways to cope. It was Queen Supyala who took the exile much, much harder. The princesses who grew from small girls, the hopes and frustrations and the squabbles and alliances of the 4 princesses who grew from small girls to young women during the exile are also described in the second part. The king died in Ratnagiri in 1916, and after a few years, the family was allowed to return to Burma. The third part of the book describes what happened to the family after the exile ended. It details Queen Supyala's life in Rangoon, where she regained some of her feisty spirit. It also describes the very different lives of the princesses, 2 of whom settled in India. When I first started researching the book, I thought I would end with the death of the 3rd princess, who died in 1962. But I soon realized that for a sense of completion, one also needed to look at the lives of their children, because their children's lives were inextricably intertwined with those of the mothers, and the children also led very varied and interesting lives. The third part of the book, therefore, also touches upon King Thibaw's grandchildren. The epilogue tells of the remnants of this once all-powerful dynasty. It tells of King Thibaw's descendants who live today in Mumbai, in Ratnagiri, in Calcutta, in Memio, and in Rangoon. I'm going to now give you just run you through slides. The slides are also chronologically arranged. Basically, the ones while they were ruling, that is before the exile, are set in Mandalay. During the exile are set in Ratnagiri, and after the exile are between India and Burma. The first few slides will give you an idea of the opulence in the court during King Thibaut's rule. This is a betel nut box that used to belong to King Thibaut. It was taken away by the British after they occupied the palace, and it was sent to the BNB Museum. It's made of solid gold, and it's totally and completely embedded with rubies. It's in the shape of a caraway, which is a mythical Burmese bird, and it's a symbol of longevity. That's another betel nut box that used to belong to a member of the family. That traditional wave-like pattern is very typical in Burma, and it's also made of solid gold and set with rubies. It has 2 gold trays in it. This is a wooden comb mounted with gold and set with uncut rubies and diamonds. It would have belonged to one of the maids of the palace. It was only people in the palace that were allowed to use these precious stones. It would have been part of the cosmetic box that she owned. The cosmetic box, the Biet as it was called, had things like perfume, hair oil, the Tanaka powder that they put on their face, and this comb. This is the setting of the lion throne, the most important throne in the palace. There were 8 thrones in the palace. The palace was very grand, very totally gilded in gold, with a lot of intricate carving and a lot of symbolism in all the carving. The lion throne had the peacock that symbolized that was the emblem of the royal family, the dancing peacock. It also had the lion in it, which symbolized bravery. And on top were carved the 33 gods of the Tavahimsa heaven, which is how do I pronounce it, Supriya? Tavahimsa heaven, which is heaven in Buddhist cosmology. Basically, they were carved on top to symbolically say that they were protecting the king and that he was their representative on earth. That's an old photograph of the Fiatat, which is a wooden spire that was on top of the lion throne. And it was supposed to represent the center of the universe. They had a very grand idea of themselves. They were so cut off from the rest of the world. So they really imagined that, he was the God's representative on earth, and they lived at the center of the universe. That's a recent photograph of the palace of the Fiata. The palace was burnt down during World War II. It was bombed and burnt down. The palace was not one building, but a warren of about 120 buildings of varying sizes. This is Queen Supyalat's apartment. It gives you an idea of how large some of them were. The original palace had very intricate carving, both inside and outside each of the apartments. Now the reconstructed palace, of course, does not have it, but this gives you a sense of how detailed and richly it was carved. Everything was grand. This is King Thibaut's barge. This is how Queen Supyalat and the ladies of the court dressed. At the bottom is the tamien. It was always in rich silk. Even the maids of honor wore silk tamiens. It's like the lungi. And on top was the yinsi, or the breast cloth that was woven tightly over the breast. And then it was covered with a cotton muslin jacket. This yinsi actually belonged to Queen Supyalat. It was stolen from her apartment after occupation by the British. She was supposed to have been the most accomplished dancer in Burma. She often danced for the king and queen. She was supposed to have been very beautiful, and her movement was supposed to have been as graceful as a blade of grass swaying in the breeze. That's a photograph of King Thibaut, Queen Supyalat, and Queen Supyadale, found in the palace after its occupation. After King Thibaut surrendered, he asked that he be taken away on an elephant. The British refused. Instead, he was carted away, he and his family, in 2 bullock carts of the kind commonly used in Mandalay in those days. This is a painting of the departure of King Thibaw. You can see the palace in the background and 2 rows of bayonet-holding British soldiers. And the royal family are under the 8 white umbrellas. All the slides that follow now are set in Ratnagiri until I tell you. This was the first compound that King Thibaw was housed in Ratnagiri. This is Outram House. It's now the home of the police commissioner in Ratnagiri. There were 2 homes next to each other, Outram House and Baker Bungalow. The king and his family lived in Baker Bungalow. The entourage lived in Outram Hall. This was an idol in the pagoda that the king had built at Outram Hall. It's interesting to see that the compounds now have shrunk in size. Baker Bungalow has been destroyed. And this idol is outside the police commissioner's home, and it's still worshipped by Buddhists in Ratnagiri. Amitav Ghosh's book, which I found absolutely enchanting. And I guess I was at one of those points in my life where I had time. I was running a business that wasn't going anywhere. So I just had time, and I tried to look up as much as I could on the internet. And there really wasn't that much information available. And it was my birthday, and Pradeep offered to take me wherever I wanted. So I said, I really want to go to Ratnagiri. So,
and they had other choices, I think.
They had enough choices. And I met Neeru at a party, Neeru Nanda at a party just before leaving for Ratnagiri. And she burst out laughing. Actually, Pradeep had offered to take me to Paris.
Yeah, I told you there were choices, and she picked Ratnagiri.
And Neeru just burst out laughing. She said, why don't you write a book? I said, I've never written a book before. She said, I'll publish it. I said, are you a publisher? She said, yeah. And then the generosity of her, when I showed her the first part of the book, she said to me, look, she said, you've done such a detailed, amazing job. Yep. She said, try and find a bigger publisher, and I'll be your backup. If you don't get a publisher, I'll be there for you.
That's amazing.
So Neeru is here. I just want to take this opportunity to thank her.
The research in the book is phenomenal. Even Amitav Ghosh, when he reviewed it, said that you were exceptionally diligent about the research in the book. And like you said, there isn't much out there about Burma, about the history. It's not like you can go to Google and type in Royal Family of Burma and have tons of stuff come up. So how did you go about collecting information, given that the little bit out there isn't very easily accessible?
Honestly, I don't think I knew what I was getting myself into. So sort of ignorance made me just blunder ahead. But I think when my first trip was to Ratnagiri, and I did meet the descendants, and I felt it was a fascinating story. And then when I came back, I met Sanjay Naran. I think he's here somewhere. He's also come. And Sanjay